The glass bottle of organic milk felt cold against Vinnette's palm as she navigated her shopping cart down aisle 7 of Westridge Market. Her Cartier watch caught the fluorescent light as she reached for a second bottle. Her mother had asked for two, actually. Her mother. Even after 8 years, those words still filled her with warmth. She was turning the corner toward the checkout when she saw them. 3 women huddled around a shopping cart, their clothes worn and faded, their faces etched with lines that spoke of hard living and harder choices. The older woman was counting food stamps with trembling fingers, while the 2 younger ones watched with expressions that mixed shame and defiance. Vinnette's heart stopped. Ruth Crandall. Carol Crandall. Lily Crandall. The family who had thrown her away like garbage 8 years ago was standing 15 feet away, arguing over whether they could afford. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to Fablethorne, where every story touches the heart. Subscribe today and let the next chapter find you. Tell us in the comments where you are watching from. We would love to hear your stories. Vinnette's mind flashed back to 8 years ago. You need to leave, now. Julian will be here in 2 hours, and we can't have you here. The tears streaming down her face as she stumbled toward the street, blinded by rejection. The screech of tires, the impact, the darkness. Then light, and a handsome doctor's face hovering over hers, his eyes filled with concern instead of disgust. Vinnette's hand instinctively moved to her face, the face that had been reconstructed, perfected, transformed. The face they wouldn't recognize. She studied them from behind a display of imported olive oils. Ruth had aged badly. Deep grooves around her mouth, gray streaking through hair that used to be meticulously colored. Carol, who'd been 21 and stunning, now looked haggard at 29, her beauty dimmed by what appeared to be exhaustion and disappointment. Lily, 24 now, still had some of her looks, but there was a hardness around her eyes that hadn't been there before. We can't afford all of this, Ruth was saying, her voice cracking. Put back the chicken breasts. We'll get the thighs instead. Mom, we need protein, Carol protested, but she was already removing items from the cart. I said put it back. Ruth's voice rose, drawing stares from other shoppers. She lowered it to a harsh whisper. Do you think I like this? Do you think I like using food stamps while my friends shop at Whole Foods? Maybe if Carol hadn't dated a drug dealer, we wouldn't be in this mess, Lily snapped. Don't you dare, Carol started. Girls, please, Ruth interrupted, tears welling in her eyes. Not here. Not in public. Vinnette watched this drama unfold with a strange detachment. 8 years ago, their rejection had nearly destroyed her. Now, watching them struggle, she felt nothing. No satisfaction at their downfall. No pleasure in their pain. Just a hollow recognition that these people, who'd raised her for 18 years, were strangers. They hadn't loved her then. They certainly hadn't thought about her since. The cashier's voice cut through her thoughts. Ma'am, your total is $127.43. Ruth's face crumpled as she looked at her food stamps. I only have $95 in benefits left this month. You'll need to remove some items, the cashier said, not unkindly, but with the weariness of someone who'd had this conversation before. Other customers in line were beginning to murmur, shifting impatiently. Carol's face flushed red with humiliation. Lily stared at her shoes. And Vinnette made a decision. She walked up to the register, her Louboutin heels clicking on the linoleum, her designer handbag swinging from her shoulder. She could feel eyes turning toward her. The elegant, sophisticated woman who clearly didn't belong in this moment of poverty and shame. Excuse me? Vinnette said to the cashier, her voice smooth and cultured, so different from the hesitant whisper she'd once spoken in. I'd like to cover their purchase. Ruth, Carol, and Lily looked up in shock. That's very kind, but... Ruth started. Please, Vinnette insisted, sliding her black American Express card across the counter. Consider it a blessing. We all need help sometimes. The transaction was completed in stunned silence. Ruth tried to thank her, but Vinnette simply smiled, a mysterious, closed-lip smile, and returned to her own cart. As she loaded her Mercedes-Benz SUV with her purchases, organic produce, prime cuts of meat, imported cheeses, the expensive items the Crandells had been forced to put back, she saw them emerge from the store. They were loading their meager groceries into a battered 2015 Honda Civic that had clearly seen better days. Vinnette locked her trunk and took a breath. 8 years ago, she'd been the one crying in the street. 8 years ago, she'd been the one they'd discarded. Now it was time they knew what they'd thrown away. She walked toward them, her posture confident, her stride purposeful. They were at their car, Ruth fumbling with keys, when Vinnette spoke. "Hello, Ruth." Carol. Lily. All three women froze. They turned slowly, confusion written across their faces. "I'm sorry, do we know you?" Ruth asked, her voice uncertain. Vinnette smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You should. You raised me for 18 years. I think you have us confused with," Carol began. "My name is Vinnette Curlew," Vinnette said, her voice clear and strong. "Though you used to call me Vinnette Crandall. Before you threw me out of the house so I wouldn't embarrass Carol's rich boyfriend." The color drained from Ruth's face. No, that's not possible. Vinnette had a... She looked like a monster, Vinnette supplied, her voice sharp. "Yes, I did. I had a port wine stain across half my face. A face you couldn't stand to look at. A face that embarrassed you so much you hid me away like a dirty secret." "Vinnette?" Lily whispered, her eyes wide with shock. "What happened to you?" Carol breathed. "Your face." "What happened?" Vinnette's laugh was bitter. "You want to know what happened? The night you threw me out, the night you told me to pack a bag and stay with friends you knew I didn't have. I was hit by a car. I nearly died crossing that street because I was crying so hard I couldn't see." Ruth's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God." "The hospital called you," Vinnette continued, her voice steady despite the emotion churning in her chest. "They told you I'd been in an accident. That I needed surgery. That I was alone." She paused, letting the weight of her next words sink in. "And not one of you came. Not one of you called. Not one of you cared enough to check if I was alive or dead." "We were going to..." Ruth started weakly. "You were going to what?" Vinnette cut her off. "Come see me after Carol's important weekend was over? After you'd impressed the drug dealer who ended up destroying your lives?" Carol flinched. "How did you..." "I know everything," Vinnette said. "I know Julian Ashworth is serving 30 years in federal prison. I know the FBI seized all his assets, including the money he'd promised you. I know you lost the house, the cars, everything." She tilted her head. "How does it feel, Carol? How does it feel to have someone look at you and see only your usefulness? To be valued only for what you could bring to the table?" "Vinnette, please." Ruth was crying now, tears streaming down her weathered face. At that moment, a car pulled into the parking lot. A battered 2017 Toyota Camry, the same car David Crandall had been driving 8 years ago, now even more worn and dented. David got out, his shoulders slumped, his clothes hanging loose on a frame that had lost considerable weight. "Ruth, what's taking so..." He stopped when he saw Vinnette, confusion crossing his features. "Who's this?" "Dad," Carol whispered. It's Vinnette." David's eyes widened. He took a step closer, studying her face with disbelief. "That's impossible. Vinnette was..." "Deformed," Vinnette supplied. Ugly? An embarrassment? She turned her face, showing him the perfect profile where a port wine stain used to dominate. The doctor who hit me with his car gave me reconstructive surgery. Turns out I was actually quite beautiful underneath. You just never bothered to look. David's face crumpled. Vinnette, sweetheart, we're so sorry. We didn't know. Didn't know what? Vinnette's voice rose. Didn't know that I was a human being deserving of love? Didn't know that a child shouldn't be treated like a servant in her own home? Didn't know that throwing your daughter out into the street might have consequences? We made mistakes, Ruth sobbed. Terrible mistakes. But we can make it right. We can start over. We can be a family again. Vinnette looked at the four of them. These people who'd given her a roof but never a home, who'd fed her body but starved her soul. A family? She repeated softly. You want to be a family now? She shook her head. I already have a family. A real family. One that loves me unconditionally. Please, David begged. And there was something pathetic in his desperation. We know we failed you. We know we were cruel. But we're struggling, Vinnette. We've lost everything. If you could just help us, just a little. And there it was, the truth beneath the apologies. They didn't want her. They wanted her money. Let me tell you what happened after you abandoned me, Vinnette said, her voice cold now. The doctor who performed my surgery? His name was Dr. Peter Curlew. He took me to his parents' home to recover because none of you would take me in. She paused, watching their faces. And there, I discovered something miraculous. Jack and Jane Curlew, the people who took in a broken stranger and loved her back to wholeness, they were my real parents. My biological parents. What? Ruth's face went white. That's not possible. You're my daughter. I gave birth to... You gave birth to a healthy baby girl who died in the hospital, Vinnette said flatly. Jane Curlew gave birth to a premature baby with facial deformities. In her postpartum depression, she switched the identification tags. She gave me to you and took your deceased baby as her own. The silence was absolute. A car drove past. Somewhere, a shopping cart rattled. But the 5 people in that parking lot were frozen in a tableau of shock and revelation. So, you see, Vinnette continued, you were never really my family at all. You were just the people who raised me, poorly, while my real family spent 18 years searching for me. 18 years of guilt and grief and desperate hope. Her voice softened slightly. And when they found me, they didn't care about my face. They didn't care about my scars. They loved me, actually loved me, something you never did. We loved you, Ruth tried. No, Vinnette interrupted sharply. You tolerated me. You used me. You made me earn my keep while my sisters were treated like princesses. Carol and Lily went to private school while I went to public school because you didn't want me to embarrass them. You took family portraits without me. You hid me away when guests visited. You threw me out when I became inconvenient. She took a breath. That's not love, Ruth. That's abuse. Vinnette, we're sorry, Carol said, tears running down her face. We're so sorry. We were young and stupid and you're still the same people, Vinnette said. The only difference is now you need something from me. If I were still ugly, still deformed, still poor, would you be apologizing? Would you be begging for a relationship? Or would you still cross the street to avoid me? No one answered. They didn't need to. The silence was answer enough. I forgive you, Vinnette said finally. Not because you deserve it, but because holding on to anger gives you power over me that you don't deserve. I forgive you so I can move on completely. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. Forgiveness doesn't mean I owe you anything." She turned to walk away, then paused and looked back. "By the way, my father, my real father, is Jack Curlew, CEO of Curlew Industries, one of the largest manufacturing companies in the state. My mother is Jane Curlew, senior partner at Whitmore and Associates, the top law firm in the city. I graduated from Stanford with a degree in business and now serve as COO of my father's company. I live in a penthouse downtown. I drive luxury cars, and I want for nothing." She smiled at their stunned expressions. "Everything you wanted for Carol and Lily? I have it. Everything you thought I'd never be because of my face? I became it. And I did it without you. I did it despite you." She walked back to her Mercedes, got in, and drove away. In her rearview mirror, she saw them still standing there, frozen in the parking lot, staring after her. Vinnette was reviewing quarterly reports when her office phone rang. Her assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Ms. Curlew, there's a Ruth Crandall on line 2. She says it's urgent." Vinnette stared at the blinking light for a long moment. Then she picked up. "Hello, Ruth." "Vinnette, thank God." Ruth's voice was breathless, desperate. "I know I have no right to ask, but we're being evicted. We're going to be homeless. David lost his job, and we can't make rent, and I thought maybe." "You thought I'd give you money," Vinnette finished. "Just a loan," Ruth said quickly. "We'll pay you back, I swear. Please, Vinnette, we have nowhere else to turn." Vinnette closed her eyes. Part of her, the wounded 18-year-old who still lived inside her, wanted to say no, wanted to let them face the consequences of their choices. But she wasn't that girl anymore. "I'm not giving you money," Vinnette said, "but my mother would like to invite you to dinner. This Saturday at 7. All 4 of you." Your mother?" Ruth's voice was confused. "Jane Curlew, my real mother, the one who gave birth to me, the one whose child you raised without knowing. She wants to meet you." There was a long pause. "We'll be there," Ruth said quietly. The Crandalls arrived at the Curlew estate in David's battered Camry, which looked absurdly out of place among the luxury vehicles in the circular driveway. They sat in the car for a moment, staring up at the massive colonial mansion with its soaring columns and manicured gardens. "This is where Vinnette lives?" Lily whispered. "This is where she belongs," Carol corrected softly. A butler answered the door and led them through a foyer larger than their entire apartment. Their footsteps echoed on marble floors. Original artwork, pieces they recognized from art history books, hung on the walls. A Steinway grand piano sat in what appeared to be a casual sitting room. They were led to a formal dining room where a table was set with china and crystal that probably cost more than their car. Jack Curlew stood at the head of the table, distinguished in a tailored suit. Jane Curlew, elegant in a simple but clearly expensive dress, stood beside him. And there was Vinnette, breathtaking in a designer outfit that fit her like it had been made for her, which it probably had been. But there were 2 other people as well, a handsome man in his 30s and a beautiful woman holding a toddler. "Welcome," Jack said warmly, though his eyes held a certain wariness. "Please sit. This is our son, Dr. Peter Curlew, and his wife, Dr. Daisy Curlew, and their daughter Emma. Peter, the doctor who'd hit Vinnette, the brother she'd never known she had." As they sat, Ruth couldn't help but stare at the resemblance between Peter and Vinnette. The same strong jawline, the same intelligent eyes. Siblings, real siblings, bound by blood and love. Dinner was served, course after course of exquisite food prepared by a professional chef. The Crandalls ate quietly, overwhelmed by the luxury surrounding them, acutely aware of how far they'd fallen and how high Vinnette had risen. Finally, as dessert was being cleared, Jane spoke. "Ruth, David, I asked you here because I owe you an apology." Ruth looked up in surprise. You You owe us? Yes, Jane said firmly. 18 years ago, I was suffering from severe postpartum depression. When I saw my baby, saw Vinnette, with her facial deformity, I couldn't bond with her. The depression told me she'd be better off without a mother who couldn't love her properly. She paused, her voice thickening with emotion. So I switched the identification tags in the hospital. I gave you my daughter and took your deceased baby as my own. Ruth's hand flew to her mouth. David sat back heavily in his chair. I robbed you of your biological daughter, Jane continued. I gave you a child you didn't expect, with needs you didn't sign up for. And while that doesn't excuse how you treated her, nothing excuses that. I do bear responsibility for putting you in that position. She met Ruth's eyes. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the deception, and I'm sorry for the burden I placed on you. But, Jack interjected, his voice firm, we're also grateful. For 18 years, you fed her, clothed her, gave her shelter. You kept her alive until we could find her again. And for that, we want to thank you. He slid an envelope across the table. David opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a check. $50,000, Jack said. That's roughly $2,777 per year for 18 years of care. We think that's fair compensation. Ruth started crying. David just stared at the check. This is too much, David whispered. It's exactly what you're owed, Jane said. Nothing more, nothing less. Consider your debt paid. Ours and yours. Carol leaned forward suddenly. Vinnette, I need you to know about Julian. He wasn't who I thought he was. He told me his family was in real estate, but the truth was he was running a drug operation. By the time I found out, the FBI was already investigating. When they arrested him, they seized everything he'd given us. The jewelry, the car he'd bought me, everything. And they wanted to know how much I knew. Did you? Vinnette asked quietly. No. No, Carol said, meeting her former sister's eyes. I swear I didn't. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that I threw you out for him. I chose a criminal over my own sister because he had money and you had nothing to offer us. She wiped tears from her eyes. I'm so ashamed. We all should be. We are, Lily added. Vinnette, if we could go back. But you can't, Vinnette interrupted gently. None of us can. What's done is done. The question is what we do now. She looked at the 4 people who'd raised her, and she saw something she'd never seen before. Genuine remorse. Real shame. Actual understanding of what they'd done. It didn't erase the past, but it was something. I've put the past behind me, Vinnette said finally. I've moved on. I have a family who loves me, a career I'm proud of, a life beyond anything I could have imagined. I don't need your apology to be whole. I'm already whole. But I accept it anyway, because holding on to bitterness only poisons the person carrying it. She stood, and Peter stood with her, putting a supportive hand on her shoulder. I wish you well, Vinnette said. I truly do. Use that money to get back on your feet. Find jobs, rebuild your lives, maybe learn to value people for who they are instead of what they look like or what they can offer you. She smiled slightly. That's all I have to say to you. We're even now. You raised me, and my parents have compensated you for it. We're square, but we're not family. We'll never be family. I hope you can accept that. The Crandalls left shortly after, the check clutched in David's hands, their eyes still wide with shock at everything they'd learned. As their car pulled away, Jane put her arm around Vinnette. Are you all right, sweetheart? I'm perfect, Vinnette said, meaning it. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Ruth Crandall was buying groceries. Real groceries this time, paid for with money from David's new job, when she saw the magazine in the checkout line. On the cover, Vinnette smiled radiantly in a wedding dress, standing next to a devastatingly handsome man. The headline read, "Billionaire tech mogul Marcus Holloway weds COO Vinnette Curlew in event of the year." Ruth picked up the magazine with trembling hands, flipping to the article. Photos showed a lavish wedding at a private estate, attended by celebrities and business leaders. Vinnette looked like a princess. No, like a queen. Confident, radiant, loved. The article mentioned that the intimate ceremony had been attended by family and close friends only. Ruth, Carol, Lily, and David's names were nowhere in the list of attendees. They hadn't been invited. They hadn't even been told. To Vinnette, they truly were strangers now. Ruth put the magazine back and finished her shopping in silence. When she got home, she showed the article to David and the girls. They looked at the pictures of the life Vinnette had built. The life they could have been part of if only they'd loved her when it mattered. "Do you think she's happy?" Lily asked quietly. "Look at her face," Carol said, her voice thick with tears. "She's radiant. She's finally with people who see her for who she really is." "We had 18 years," David said softly. 18 years to love her, to value her, to see past her face to her heart. We failed, and now we have to live with that. Ruth folded the magazine closed, hiding Vinnette's joyful face. "I hope," she whispered, "that she never thinks about us at all. I hope she's so happy in her new life that the pain we caused is nothing but a distant memory. That's the least she deserves." 6 months after her wedding, Vinnette sat in her home office, now as VP of Curlew Industries, after another promotion. The walls were decorated with family photos. Her wedding, Emma's 3rd birthday party, a family vacation to Italy with her parents and Peter's family. On her desk sat a framed photo from 8 years ago. Her first family dinner at the Curlew house. Her face still bandaged from surgery, but surrounded by people whose love was evident in every smile. Marcus, her husband, came in with 2 cups of coffee. "What are you thinking about?" "How different my life could have been," Vinnette said. "If Peter hadn't hit me with that car, if my parents hadn't taken me in, if they hadn't loved me enough to search for the truth." "Everything happens for a reason," Marcus said, kissing the top of her head. "Maybe," Vinnette agreed. "Or maybe good people make good things happen. My parents could have hidden what they discovered. Peter could have performed the surgery and sent me on my way. But they didn't. They chose love. They chose me." She looked at the family photos, at the evidence of a life built on genuine affection rather than obligation. "The Crandalls taught me what I didn't want to be," she said finally. "My real family taught me what I could become. Both lessons were necessary. Both shaped who I am." She smiled at Marcus. "But I know which teachers I'm grateful for." Marcus squeezed her shoulder. "Have you heard from them?" "No," Vinnette said, "and I don't expect to. That chapter is closed. This is my story now, the one I'm writing with people who love me, the one where I'm not the ugly duckling or the servant or the embarrassment, the one where I'm just me. Vinnette Curlew Holloway, daughter, sister, aunt, wife, executive. A woman defined by her choices, not by her circumstances." She stood, ready to head to a board meeting where her opinions would be valued and her insights respected. "That," she said, "is the happy ending I deserved all along." 10 years after that supermarket encounter, Ruth attended a charity gala. She'd gotten a job as an event coordinator for a hotel chain and was working the event. As she supervised the catering staff, she saw Vinnette across the ballroom, laughing with her husband and parents, her brother and his family nearby. Vinnette was presenting a check to a children's charity, a charity for kids with facial deformities. "I know what it's like to be judged by your appearance," Vinnette told the crowd. I know what it's like to be treated as less than human because of something you can't control. This foundation will ensure that no child with a facial deformity goes without the medical care and emotional support they need. Every child deserves to feel beautiful. Every child deserves to be loved. The ballroom erupted in applause. Ruth stood in the shadows, tears streaming down her face, watching the woman her daughter had become. Without her, Vinnette never once looked in her direction. She didn't need to. She had already moved on to bigger, better, and more beautiful things. Beauty is not found in the perfection of our features, but in the content of our character. Those who judge others solely by their appearance reveal the ugliness in their own souls. True family is not determined by blood or biology, but by love, acceptance, and unwavering support. And sometimes, the cruelest rejection leads us to the very place we were always meant to be. Treat people with kindness, not because of what they look like or what they can offer you, but because everyone deserves to be valued for who they are. The face you turn away from today might be the one you need tomorrow, but by then, it may have turned away from you forever. What you reject may be someone else's treasure, and that treasure, once claimed by those who recognize its worth, is lost to you forever. Thanks for spending time with us today. If this story moved you, show it some love by liking, sharing, and subscribing. We share new stories every week to warm your heart and spark conversation. Please click the playlist for more amazing stories. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We love connecting with you. Another secret waits in the next story. Will you be there?